In our gospel here tonight, the brothers James and John do indeed recognize that our Lord Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of David. They don't fully understand what that means. They both expect Jesus' kingdom to be more like an earthly kingdom of wealth and comfort and power. So for James and John, the cup and the baptism that Jesus is talking about, for them, they imagine, will be like the royal cups drunk by the kings with the finest of wine, or the baths, the fancy baths that like King Herod had in all 12 of his palaces. But as we know, the cup that Jesus will drink, when he says to the apostles, "You will also drink," is the opposite of anything fancy and comfortable. It's the cup of his passion, his great suffering, which would, of course, include his death. In fact, as we also know, the cup is so terrifying that Jesus in his humanity asked the Father to take it away from him. And the baptism that Jesus talks about is none other than the baptism of his blood, which will be shed in the scourging, but also upon the cross. So St. Mark tells us when the other 10 apostles see and hear what James and John had in mind, they became indignant. In this context, though, the word indignant is more than just being annoyed at someone. Here the other 10 are outraged at the brothers. But that could be because many of them might have wanted that same cushy position in the kingdom they were looking forward to, because they too had the perspective of an earthly kingdom rather than the heavenly kingdom of our Lord Jesus. So what Jesus does then is something that people of today need to pay close attention to, especially those who are called to any sort of leadership. Because Jesus rebukes the apostles for their demonic idea of what it means to be a leader. Now you might be saying, wait. A demonic idea of leadership? Yeah, Jesus tells us straight up. Leaders of this world exercise their leadership for their own benefit. It's exactly the way Satan understands and exercises leadership, for the benefit of the one who's in charge, the one who has the authority, complete and total selfishness. Now, of course, Satan is not in charge at all. God is. He doesn't have any more authority. God is the authority. But the devil sure can influence those who are in charge and do everything he can to get the most benefit for themselves through his influence, despite who might get hurt, despite who might become oppressed. But Jesus turns his whole image completely around. Leadership is for the benefit of the ones who follow the leader. This means that the leader is actually a servant. And the greatest of leaders is also the greatest of servants. So, is Jesus going to set the example of servant leadership, which of course he is? Is he going to give the example by dying the death of a king? No, he died the death of a slave. Don't forget, crucifixion was reserved for slaves and people of very low class. This, of course, became one of the greatest ironies of all time. The slave there in the middle, flanked by the two criminals in the crucifixion there, he was the king of the universe. So for this very reason, then, any Christian in any position of leadership, in society or, of course, in the church, needs to see his or her authority only in terms how it may be used to glorify God and benefit the good of all. But you still got to get something straight. This does not mean that leaders don't have true authority if they're plugged in with God. The leader has to still be able to make decisions, organize people, get projects done in such a way the maximum number of people may benefit. A leader still has to be followed and obeyed. But a good leader, a leader who's a true servant, is never to use his authority to benefit only himself. That's a kind of leadership that is abusive, the worst kind, especially if it comes at the expense of others. So what this means then is that leaders must have, and there's no getting around this, the virtues of prudence and humility. And ultimately, a servant leader will never be able to do any good at all unless they have a very strong trust in God, but also the willingness to suffer. A servant leader, especially servant leaders who are fathers, heads of families, often must suffer by putting their own interests last. But leaders, good leaders, those who make good sense, know that their suffering is not without hope. There's always hope in life to come for everybody involved, but also confidence in God. He has so many good things lined up for those who truly love him. And that's what a good leader does, takes people to the Lord to receive these wonderful gifts of love. As a wise businessman once put it, the challenge of leadership is to be strong, but not rude, to be kind, but not weak, to be bold, but not a bully, to be thoughtful, but not lazy, to be humble, but not timid, to be proud, but not arrogant, to have humor, but without foolishness. In other words, let those who are leaders follow the lead of our Lord Jesus Christ. So at this very Mass tonight, especially for those of you who are leaders, especially leaders of families, let's ask God for the strength that we need to place ourselves last and those we serve first.